Today we're making deep, dark chocolate ice cream. If you love chocolate or you know someone who does, this is the ice cream to make. A quick note about churning. When we get to churning the ice cream, I'll be using an attachment for my stand mixer. Of course, if you have a different kind of ice cream maker, follow the churning instructions for that. And if you don't have an ice cream maker, don't worry. I've got some suggestions in the description below for how to churn and freeze your ice cream without an ice cream machine. All right, let's get cooking. To make our chocolate ice cream, we will put together two separate mixtures. The first one is a chocolate syrup. We'll use a small saucepan and put into it 100 grams or half a cup of granulated sugar, half a cup of cocoa powder. You can use whatever kind you prefer, but to make the darkest, well, this is not coming out. There we go. All right, to make the darkest possible chocolate ice cream, you want to use a Dutch process cocoa powder. I actually use what's called a black cocoa powder, and that just really refers to the darkness of the color. And then we'll add half a cup of water. If you want, you can use coffee, strong coffee, espresso, etc. It doesn't give a strong coffee flavor. It does slightly caffeinate your ice cream though. So buyer beware there. I'm just gonna whisk this together and go ahead and turn on the heat. Once this comes to a boil, we will let it boil, but be careful, obviously don't want to let it boil over the sides. We'll let it boil for 30 seconds and then take that off the heat. My chocolate syrup mixture is bubbling around the edges, so that is when I am going to start my 30 seconds. And that bubbling quickly reaches the center of the pot. I'll whisk as I go and turn the heat down just a little bit so it doesn't boil too hard or too high. And there we go. 30 seconds of boiling. We're going to set this aside for 5 minutes, and we'll have one more thing to put in here, but next we're going to get the mixture ready for the cream part of the ice cream. For the cream mixture, I'm going to use a medium or even large sauce pot, and in goes another half cup of granulated sugar. That's 100 grams for those of you measuring by weight. Close enough. 42 grams of light corn syrup. And that is, how much by 2 tablespoons? 2 tablespoons by volume for those of you measuring with spoons and cups. All right, a little bit more, a little bit more. That last bit kind of sneaks up on us. And close enough. All right, I set this on the stove. And speaking of measuring with cups, we're going for 2 cups of whole milk. Keep that milk out, we'll use it for one more step. And 1 cup of heavy cream. There we go. That will get added to the pot. Keep this big measuring cup too, because in it I will put 42 grams, see that number pops up a lot, 42 grams of cream cheese, that'd be 3 tablespoons, and a good healthy few shakes of kosher salt. And we want our cream cheese to be softened, so at room temperature or so. Mine's been sitting out for a little while, waiting for the rest of the stuff to come together. All right, and one more thing. We are going to make a cornstarch slurry. And this is what will, so that the cream cheese is going to be the emulsifier. That will be what binds our ice cream together instead of eggs, which would be more of a custard style, but can be a little fussy, or Philadelphia style ice cream, which doesn't use an emulsifier and tends to be a little bit icier. So this is a good middle ground. It's the technique is from Jenny's Ice Cream, and I've just adapted my recipe a little bit from there. All right, so in here goes 4 teaspoons of cornstarch and a little bit more milk, and this is a thickener, okay? And just like if you've ever made a gravy or a sauce that uses a roux, some kind of a starch and liquid paste to thicken it, that's all this is. And we're just mixing this together separately because this will get added a little ways into our cream and milk mixture getting cooked, and we want it to get mixed into a slurry. Okay, so that there's just a small amount of liquid with that starch, and that ensures we have no clumps. Okay, so with these pieces in place, we are about ready to start cooking this cream mixture. It's been about 5 minutes since we took that chocolate sauce off of the heat, and so it is time to put that one other ingredient in there, and that is some bittersweet chocolate. You can use semi-sweet instead, whatever you like, but again, for really deep, dark chocolate ice cream, we're going to use semi-sweet chocolate. You could definitely chop that. I'm just going with chocolate chips. They work just fine, nice and convenient. So it's, once again, 42 grams. That's 1.5 ounces. All right, and there we go. And I will whisk that in to that still very, very warm, even we would say hot, chocolate sauce mixture. And hopefully more smoothly, we'll turn the heat on, ta-da, for our cream mixture. And don't worry if just a little bit of chocolate transfers over. We'll go ahead and whisk this and bring it to a boil. All right, and once that comes to a boil, we'll let it boil for 3 minutes, but we'll check back in with it. And by the way, it'll feel like forever for this to come to a boil, but watch it carefully. Sweetened milk and cream boiling over on your stove. If you've ever done it, you never want to do it again. So definitely watch it like a hawk. It goes from seeming like it's never going to come to a boil to boiling over so quickly. All right, so we will see this when it is boiling. It's been 7 or 8 minutes. I've stirred my cream mixture on and off while putting away the rest of the ingredients and tidying up the counter a bit. And there are bubbles along the top. This is definitely when you do not want to take your eyes off of the stove. I'm speaking as someone who occasionally has done that and paid the price, and you will start to see right around the edges a little bit more active bubbling, and this is right about when your cream mixture will really start to boil. And as soon as it does that, we start timing 3 minutes, and here is, boom, my 3 minutes. I'm going to see how fast that happened. I turned the heat down a little. You can also always lift your pan off of the heat, which will work more quickly to cool it down than adjusting the temperature, especially if you have a electric stove, an electric stove. That'll work a little bit faster. All right, and we're just going to mix every now and again to make sure we don't get anything getting gunky along the sides, and let this go for 3 minutes. My milk mixture has been at a low boil for almost 3 minutes. And at this point, I'm going to stir the cornstarch slurry just a little bit to loosen anything up that kind of solidified at the bottom. And then right when we hit our 3-minute mark, we'll pour that into the pot. Quickly give it another whisk. Make sure that doesn't clump up in here. And bring the heat back up to medium. And we want this to come back to a boil. And then again, watch it very carefully and let it boil for 1 more minute. So here we are back to boiling. That happens pretty quickly. All right, we're gonna give this 1 more minute of boiling, and then we will be adding it to our cream cheese and salt. And at this point, I will give it 1 more whisk. And then whisk my cream cheese mixture as well, so that's nice and smooth. I'll check back in about 20 seconds. And there's that additional minute of boiling for the cream mixture. At this point, the cream cheese and salt are whisked together, and this is why you don't want it to be cold. When you start, it'll stay clumpy, and we want this to mix in really smoothly. And to ensure that there aren't any little bits of cream cheese in your ice cream, which isn't the end of the world, but it's just texturally a little funny, I'm going to put just a little bit of the milk and cream mixture in here, and then we're going to whisk that same slurry idea. We're just going to whisk that really thoroughly together, and then we'll start adding more of the liquid. There we go. A nice, fairly homogeneous mixture here. Now I can add all, or at least maybe half, of the remaining cream mixture. Give that a little bit of a whisk. Grab the spatula I left in the drawer on the other side of the kitchen. Ta-da! And we're gonna stir in the rest of that cream mixture. Make sure we get all the good stuff at the bottom. Hopefully nothing chunky, just maybe a little bit sweeter down there. All right, and remember our chocolate syrup. That's gonna go in as well. Mix it all together once it's all in the mixing bowl or cup or what have you. And just thoroughly whisk that. If you're using a glass bowl or mixing cup like I am, then it is easy to see when it's all mixed together. And there we have it. Thoroughly mixed together, but still too hot to go in the refrigerator. So I will leave this on the counter and stir it periodically so that a skin doesn't form on the top. And then I'll cover it and thoroughly refrigerate it before I try to churn this ice cream. And that usually for me means leaving it overnight. Even for more than 1 day, if you don't get back to it, that's okay. But we want it to be really, really refrigerator cold before we churn it. And that's no matter what kind of ice cream churn or hand mixing churning method you use. All right, we will see this when it is ready to be churned. My chocolate ice cream base has been hanging out in the refrigerator for an entire day, so it is definitely thoroughly chilled. I have the attachment for my KitchenAid mixer all set up, and so now all that's left to do is to churn this ice cream. Remember, whatever kind of ice cream maker you have, if you have one, just follow its churning directions. And if you don't have any ice cream making equipment, don't fear, just check the description below for some instructions on how to do this with no special equipment. All right, here we go. Our ice cream is churned, And for this recipe and this particular ice cream maker, that takes about 25 minutes. It is the consistency of soft serve, so terrific. If that's the consistency you're going for, go to town. Of course, if you're not going to eat it all at once, or you prefer a harder scooped ice cream, then put it into containers. Anything will do as long as it's freezer safe. I happen to like reusing containers from some of my other favorite dairy products. So we have a yogurt container and of course a tub from Kerrygold. And I'll be scooping this ice cream into those containers, and it takes a few hours in the freezer for it to harden up to that kind of hard scoop consistency. We hope you give this a try and you check back soon for another recipe.